Well, guys, Palantir had blown out of the water earnings, but of course, Wall Street tanked the stock right afterwards. But the real question is, can Palantir hit that $1 trillion market cap? So let's talk exactly about that today. And of course, guys, as always, Wall Street has an opinion on it as well, which some I agree with, some I don't agree with as well. So let's cut through all the BS, cut through all the noise, and get you guys the truth. Just make sure you like the video if you like getting the truth out the hype, because that's exactly what you're going to get today, guys. Despite the fact Palantir had incredible, blow it out of the water earnings. I don't know what else to say outside of that. But just simply because you have blow it out of the water earnings does not mean your stock should just go up infinitely forever, right? There is still a valuation piece. Wall Street can still push the stock ahead of the valuation as well, even with incredible earnings like we got from Palantir. So I have no complaints about the actual earnings themselves, but let's see what the Wall Streeters are saying about Palantir's earnings and everything else surrounding it and its future.
It's time now for our 360 round. For that, let's bring in our panel to discuss Palantir's latest earnings. Joining us, Joe Casticli, the portfolio manager at the Free Markets ETF, and Shai Ballur, the chief market strategist at Futurum. Shai, we'll start with you. Thoughts on the report?
Looking at the price action down 8%, you would assume that the earnings weren't great, but they're actually very impressive. Maybe the market just got ahead of itself, but long-term, nothing has changed. We at Futurum believe that every week we get stories from Google, Microsoft, Meta, all the hyperscalers that they're building these new compute factories that essentially connects directly to why Palantir can post video game-like numbers like they did yesterday. So those trillions of dollars are going to be continuing to be spent on AI infrastructure, on CapEx that are going to be creating this new raw capacity. That capacity alone doesn't really generate the productivity that all these enterprises need. And that's exactly where Palantir sits. So although it's down, I'm looking at it 8% right now. I just think the market ran up a little too aggressively on the stock entering the print, and now it's just digesting a bit.
I'm not sure he really answered the question, but let me help him out here a little bit. Video game numbers, sure, great analogy there. Whenever you're talking about, just putting up numbers that just don't make any sense outside of a video game. That's kind of what we got with this earnings call here. He could have used the word incredible, and he wanted to talk about a bunch of other things that were kind of indirectly correlated, but not directly correlated. Yes, it will eventually mean money for Palantir as well. As all these sort of things built out, but it seems like he's already got a narrative he wants to kind of push. Okay, fine, whatever. That's the reason, that is our advantage, as retail investors, because we cared about the earnings. We cared about the growth. We cared about, what the numbers were going to be. What did management guide to? All those sort of things were top of our mind, which apparently is not top of his mind at all. So again, that's why we were all over this stock, $7, $10, $15, $20, whatever the number was that most of us, at least right here on this channel, got in on this stock on. That right there is the reason why, because we were busy breaking down the, earnings and the earnings calls and figuring out and separating the truth from the hype and the narratives and everything else, and simply getting down to, are they executing or not? And they were executing on a high level, last year and coming into this year. But yet last year you could buy it for 20, coming into this year, now all of a sudden they're, executing on an even higher level. And, Wall Street wants to dump it down. Now, we'll talk more as to why that happened here in just a second. But nonetheless, kind of shows you where these guys kind of stand and kind of why you got to take a lot of what they say with a grain of salt.
All right. And Joe, coming over to you, we saw Palantir blow through expectations. They raised their guidance, but we are seeing it down. I'd love to just get some of your key takeaways as well. But also, are we seeing a sell the news scenario here, or do we think investors are finally pushing back on some of these valuations?
I think you're definitely seeing a sell the news scenario here, right? This was an absolute blowout quarter. The company had a 40% net margin in GAAP terms. Just an absolutely staggering quarter in terms of the numbers. But
there you go. He finally actually talked about something with the earnings, but he gave us a but there. So let's see what his but is.
Run up into the earnings announcement, the stock had been up tremendously ahead of the announcement, putting in a high, around 207 yesterday. So I think you see some of this. It's probably some profit taking. There's definitely some positioning within the market where some people are going to scale back a little bit. I don't know if that's indicative of, is the growth scenario still in question? I agree that there's so much spend happening in this AI and data center space. And Palantir is uniquely positioned to continue to benefit from that because they create that operational leverage for people, for their customers. So,
And Shai, you called these video game numbers. We're looking at revenue up 63%. Their margins are expanding. They had really strong guidance. It's accelerating. What makes this kind of performance so rare, and is it sustainable?
I mean, just going off the Rule of 40 score of 114, that's almost triple the terminal goal for a lot of CEOs. So I think that the commercial business of theirs is what's like kind of fueling the engine right now and why they're just growing top line at 60% plus rate with 50% operating margins. Like when you talk about their commercial revenue for just the last quarter alone, it's growing at 121% year over year, 30% sequentially. And this is off of a $400 million revenue base just the last 3 months with only around 500 customers. So that is an insane ratio when you think about for enterprise software, because a lot of SaaS firms that have that kind of revenue scale, it's based on thousands of clients. Palantir is doing it with a couple hundred. So that tells us that the runway is massive, that Palantir's customers are spending more and more, and you can see that with the 134% retention rate as well. But also, they're becoming so embedded into these operations that the stickiness is something we've never seen before. So as AI matures, their breadth is going to widen, and that's why we do believe that Palantir is probably going to hit $1 trillion valuation before this end of the cycle.
All right, so he actually got into the earnings that time, so I got to give him credit there. I'm not going to disagree with the runway. The question is not the runway. We'll talk more about the $1 trillion market cap here shortly. But to me, the question isn't any of those things, and it never has been with Palantir. You could see it from a mile away. Exactly what they were doing was so different than everybody else. I never understood the comparisons with other companies when it's just kind of like, hey, they had like a 20-year head start on everyone. Obviously, other companies will come into the space. Other folks will get better at a much more accelerated rate than Palantir did. But they're so far ahead of everybody to begin with. And like you said, they're extremely sticky. So as they continue to go after and, knock down more and more clients, it gives that runway, a solid base to kind of continue to run, into the future. It's not like the U.S. government's going to quit using Palantir. They just can't. If you understand any of how that world works, it's almost impossible to get rid of vendors once you're kind of, entrenched in there. And especially something like Palantir where nobody can do it quite like they do. Trying to unwind that and then plug somebody else in there, it's just impossible to do. So the runway to me is clear as day moving forward. The question is Wall Street going to get so far ahead of itself? Are they going to pull so much forward that in terms of the stock, not in terms of the growth rates, not in terms of, the continued growth, revenue growth every quarter, profit growth every quarter, margins getting better. But do they pull enough of that stock, that future profit forward, that future road that we all see? Do they pull enough of that forward to where the stock trades flat or down for a period of years? That's the only real question that you have with Palantir right now in regards to where the stock price is going to go over the, we'll call it medium term. That right there is the only question that I have is Wall Street going to push it to a point where that is exactly what happens, where we get a period of a year or two or sideways and down trading. That is not unusual, by the way, guys. That happens during every single bull cycle with every single great company. You point out a great company that's been a great company long-term, Apple, Microsoft, you name it. And they've all had periods of time where they got out way ahead of their fundamentals, and then they traded flat or down for a period of, at least a year, if not 2 or 3 years. Every single one of them does it. The hype train does not continue on forever. I wish that it did, guys, but ask all the folks in 2021 who fell for that narrative and are just now back to even, essentially with a lot of stocks, and some of the stocks never recovered back to those levels again. It's just simply not true, and it's not going to be true with Palantir either, despite these incredible numbers. So please don't get it twisted. I'm not bearish on the stock at all. That to me is just the only question that I have about the business, is not the business itself, but is Wall Street going to push it so far ahead in terms of stock price where we have that period of time sooner or later where we hit. It just doesn't go anywhere for, a significant period of time.
Well, Shai just said that the commercial business is now the growth engine for Palantir. I'd love to get your thoughts on what you think is driving that acceleration. Is it just purely AIP adoption, or is something more broad happening in enterprise?
Sure. So I think when you look at it, right, there was tremendous AIP adoption in the last quarter, right? But I think it goes beyond that. The stickiness that we're talking about, right, that's being driven by the FDE, the forward deployed engineers, right, who are helping these companies deploy and scale these software products faster, and it's then more accretive to clients in a quicker way, which is actually benefiting both Palantir and the end client itself. I think another area that Palantir has some unique tailwinds is in the deregulation of certain specific industries that they work with, right? So you think about energy and infrastructure, which everyone's talking about in terms of the AI and the need for stable, reliable energy. If you have streamlined permitting and that gives some budget flexibility back to these companies, they could start to deploy capital investing in this type of software to optimize their data throughout the organization. I also think banks are another area where you could see that if you start to see, capital levels lowered, and that becomes less burdensome on the banks, and then they can deploy more capital into these more growth-oriented operational AI platforms, which is exactly where Palantir excels.
And Shai, last question coming to you. If you're an investor watching Palantir's performance post these strong earnings, are we in a buy the dip scenario here, or are we waiting for the market to digest the hype before we jump in?
I think we have to wait until the valuation gravity kind of levels out a bit more. I think some concerning cracks I noticed yesterday was that the commercial revenue is kind of, the scale is breadthening within their initial customer base. I think the net new customers were around 50 in Q3, where Q2 was 70. So there is somewhat of a new logo decelerating. That's modest, but it's still decelerating. So it's raising mild concern that if the AIP flywheel can scale breadth as fast as the depth within their own existing customer base. And also, we need to see some more traction on the international side of their business. I think that international grew around 30%, US grew around 77%. So that widening gap limits the narrative that Palantir can scale globally at the same velocity. So I think that at a $500 billion market cap trading at over 100 times sale, the bar isn't just great, it's flawless acceleration. And right now, there is some levers that need to be pulled to get that next leg up.
Yeah, certainly. Shares are still 7% under pressure on the heels of those impressive numbers, likely tied to their really stretched valuations right now. Want to thank you both for being with us, Joe Castiglione from the Free Markets ET.
Okay, we'll go ahead and stop the video right there. His tailwind thesis there, I don't necessarily agree. I honestly don't care if the U.S. commercial growth is faster than Europe or anything else of that nature. I just want to see overall growth. We talked about that before right here on this channel. Everybody complains about, oh, the government's not growing anymore. That's a problem. And then, okay, cool. The government clicks up and it's like, oh, well, then the commercial growth it doesn't look so strong. And just they go back and forth. They always find something within that. However, having said that, I can't disagree with his take that, hey, when you get this stretch valuation wise, you need everything to be flawless. And this was one of the best earnings that I've ever seen in regards to company performance, and especially against expectations, and especially given, the continued, the great quarter of the quarter before and the great quarter of the quarter before that, it was like it just accelerating, got better, and just, all of a sudden it was just like a, rocket ship up in terms of performance this time around. So we got that. We got exactly that. But yet you saw it still wasn't enough to send this stock up. Any other time, if valuation isn't stretched, that's a 25% move in the stock. No doubt in my mind, with that sort of performance at least, and then momentum moving forward. And that's not what we got in regards to that. And that tells me that, hey, everybody's concerned with the valuation. And despite an incredible blowout out of the water earnings there, on the flip side, you have a situation where it's going to take everything being flawless. And I can't say everything in the earnings was flawless. Now, there was not really a negative per se, but everything wasn't flawless. Everything wasn't video game numbers like they said. Lots of numbers were video game numbers, especially the ones that matter the most. So don't get it twisted here. I'm not saying that there was negatives there, but I mean, you need something to where you can't find a flaw, where everybody universally agrees that, hey, there's no weaknesses here. Now, we're talking about, you got a little bitty weakness over here, and maybe a little bit of a little weakness over there, and, maybe a couple of little minor things around the edges. Absolutely. But when you're stretched this much valuation wise, that is exactly what you have to have. You can't have any of those either. At some point in time, something's going to let go per se. So if you're looking for a massive move up after an incredible blow out of the water earnings like you had to have, that's what you had to see. And unfortunately, we didn't get that. We got video game numbers, but, still a few things to kind of quote unquote clean up. Again, if it was a much lower valuation, no doubt in my mind, this is a 25% move, immediately after earnings, much like it was a few quarters ago, actually, whenever we saw some incredible blowout out of the water earnings. And we got those type moves after hours. So, You've got to just kind of keep that in mind as you're viewing the stock. Now, in regards to can it get to $1 trillion market cap or not? To me, there's no doubt in my mind this is a $1 trillion company one day. Again, there's a lot of bulls out there saying, hey, it's going to be 2025. Well, it's 2025. We're on an incredible hype we're on. And guess what? We're barely right around halfway there, right? That's where we're at in regards to that. So that's why I don't buy into a lot of those hype narratives like that. But do I think we get there? Absolutely. Do I think they deserve to be there? They continue to put up numbers like this? No reason to think they can. This product is sticky enough. There's a big enough demand out there. And right now, there's nobody out there that can do what they do on the level that they do and the scale that they do. It's just a question of, for us in regards to the stock, do we hit that period of time where we end up with some down or sideways trading for a period of a year plus because the valuation gets so stretched in the meantime? No doubt in my mind, the numbers will catch up and will absolutely, not only will the stock run to a $1 trillion market cap, but they will have numbers underneath it to back up and justify that $1 trillion market cap. There's no doubt in my mind that day will come. The question just becomes, do we run out ahead? How far ahead? And then can people stomach the flat or down trading in between and keep that bigger opportunity in mind that's out there? For me, that's still some years away. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you, oh, next year though, hey, you guys be keeping out. Well, we can get on hype run, and as we've seen, you can get ridiculous. Wall Street can get ridiculous. But in terms of it getting out there to that $1 trillion valuation and having fundamentals to justify it, no doubt in my mind they will get there. It's just a lot of years off from today. So if you made it this long in the video, I may have left something special down there in the pinned comment for you. So check that out. If you want to get free coaching, free courses, be a part of the best 6, 7, 8 figure Discord out there. Learn how to buy stocks like Palantir when they were at $6 and SoFi at $4 and Tesla at 100 and a whole lot of other things like that. Check it out. It's the pinned comment. See if a membership's right for you. And click this video here if you want to see exactly what I'm buying in this market. And click here to see my exact plan for this market. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.